So good evening, everyone. Welcome to our presentation, Quick Tips for Online Safety in 30 Minutes. We are committed to providing you useful material in a short amount of time. So with that in mind, we have three knowledgeable panelists who will present material over the next 30 minutes, and then they will remain available for another 30 minutes to answer your questions. As moderator, I will collect your questions throughout the presentation and present them to our panelists during the last half hour. So please type any questions you may have in the Q&A at the bottom of your screen. Speaking of our panelists, I'm happy to introduce them. We have Tammy Martin, Public Education Specialist from the Gurnee Police Department. Tony DeMonte, Administrator of Technology, Information, and Safety at Wilmette Public School District 39, and also partner at Comprehensive Security Consulting. And Kristen Jones, Community Service Supervisor from the Zacharias Center. My name is Becky DeRosa. I'm a therapist at Warren Township Youth and Family Services and will be moderating this evening. We are all here on behalf of HCHY, which is Healthy Communities, Healthy Youth, a coalition committed to making Warren Township a community in which all of our youth can thrive. Finally, I'd like to mention that this presentation is being recorded and will be available on the Warren Township Youth and Family Services website early next week. I'll go ahead and include information about the website in the chat so that we can get started. So I would just like to first welcome Tammy Martin. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen in which we'll have all of the slides here.
Okay. Hi, everyone.
Sorry, Tammy, one more moment. Sorry about that. There you go.
Good?
Yep, you're all set.
All right. Hi, everyone. I just want to introduce myself first, is that I spent 24 years as a police officer with Gurnee. And the last 4 of that, I was a school resource officer at the high school at the Old Plain campus. So I had a lot to learn when I went there. I'll share a little bit of that with you. I taught DARE years ago, and I spent my career really around juvenile law. I then moved into this position of public education specialist to do things like this and also talk to the kids at school. So we're going to talk about kind of the 2 things that are kind of the biggest problems with the computer and with your kids. So we can go ahead and move to the next slide. So, you know, when I grew up, and maybe you grew up, we didn't have the technology that we have today. I mean, it's a nightmare. You took a picture with a Polaroid and you'd rip it up and throw it away and it was gone. And that doesn't happen anymore. And there's always a concern, and it's a big concern, all the way down, in my opinion, to 4th or 5th grade where this stuff happens. And I'm talking about sexting. I imagine everyone knows what sexting is. It's asking or sending nude or partial nude pictures to each other. And we'll talk about that a little bit too. But how do you protect your child from that? You have to be really involved with what your child is doing online. Right now, that's super hard to do because the kids are online all the time with the remote learning, from school, but they still manage to, have time to get into some other things as well. Other than school, you have to limit unsupervised time on their computer, and you have to know what they're doing. You have to know what their passwords are. And if they don't want to tell you, then they lose the computer because you're the parent and you need to really protect them. So, and I know that's not easy. We've been called to numerous times to houses where a kid refused to give his phone back to his parents. So we don't want that. So sexting, here's your definition and some visual pictures here. The problem with these, it's not just kids sharing pictures with each other, and laughing about them. These are pictures of their body that they are sending to their friends. And say it's a boyfriend, girlfriend. And, the boyfriend decides, they break up, and then he sends his photo of your girlfriend or your daughter to a lot of people in the school. And we'll talk about that a little bit about what happens when that happens, because it absolutely does, every day. And when you send or have pictures of a minor on your phone in your possession, you are in fact holding child pornography. And that includes, even if it's of themselves, they are still have child pornography on their phone or their computer. These are just some examples of, these are the kind of messages that you get, about showing a picture. And people can be very persuasive to, and wear you down, and they decide that they're going to go ahead and send that picture. And that's when the problems start. And people think that they're kind of immune to it. So just a little bit, and I'm certainly not an expert like our other speaker is about human trafficking. It does happen. And it happens a lot. Fortunately, in our area, we don't see as much of it as you do in other areas, but that doesn't mean it's not real. When your child is on a computer and they're talking to somebody else, they don't know who they're actually talking to unless it's a friend that they've met and are friends with. There's so many times that you've got, a 50-year-old man who's disguising himself as a 14-year-old girl, and, they start having a conversation and they think that they really know them. And it absolutely can happen to your child. It can happen to anybody. As you see by the one, it says, meet Susan. It's a 42-year-old guy who's posing as a 15-year-old girl. So, there's a lot of questions that they start asking your child, determine location, where they go to school, little things that over time they put together to be able to locate and hopefully meet up with your child. There's something called grooming, and it's a method that people use to really get to know who your child is. And like I said, all this information, they put that away. They finally convince them to send a picture. And then maybe they threaten them, you better send me more pictures, or I'm going to tell your parents what's going on, or I'm going to release it to your school. The one thing I want to mention with this is sometimes, though, it's not just the computer. We have to be aware of what's going on in our child's lives, even when it comes to the people in their lives, because that's a real thing too, where they buy special gifts for your child, or they want to spend some alone time. And this happens over time. It's just not a one-time thing. It takes a lot of time to groom with somebody to do what you want them to do. And once they have you, they're not going to let go of you. The other big issue is the cyberbullying. And the reason that I think this is almost bigger than sexting is because cyberbullying really destroys some kids for a period of time. And my 4 years at the high school, the first time I saw a phone that had messages, I was utterly shocked at the language that these kids use, even to the point where they said you should just go kill yourself. And in this environment that we're in right now with this last year, dealing with all the things that we all are dealing with, prior to that, there were people who didn't want to come to school anymore. They were sick, they were embarrassed, they were ashamed because of the cyberbullying that was happening to them. When I was a kid, you went home and it was over until the next day. With these phones and computers, it's never over. It keeps you. And I see calls coming in 2-3 o'clock in the morning. These kids are not getting a lot of rest. I think my time is up, and it went really by fast. So if you have any questions, I'm absolutely 100% here to answer whatever you have. Thank you.
Thank you, Tammy. Yeah, we will, again, we'll have time when everyone is finished for questions. So please feel free to put them in the Q&A so we can share them with our panelists. Tony?
Yep. Top 10 tips for parents. Next slide. First off, model desired behavior. So a lot of this starts with us. We need to set an example. We need to show that it's not always healthy, good to be on a device. So use technology as parents to learn, connect, grow. Don't always be available. So when we're having family time or dinner, or there should be some device-free time where if a call comes in, if a message comes in, if a text comes in, it's okay to not answer it. So, and that's good for our kids to see. becoming a member of a digital community, and then showing kids that the power of what social media can bring by looking into positive events or projects or informational campaigns. And certainly it's okay to make mistakes and discuss those mistakes with your kids. Again, it all starts with us and showing the proper behaviors, the behaviors we want to model. Very simple premise. You don't want your kids to smoke, don't smoke. If you don't want your kids to drink, don't drink. If you don't want your kids to do certain behaviors online, you shouldn't be doing them yourself. Next slide. So let's talk about where devices live. My advice is to always keep these in high traffic locations in the home. So when I say live, it's just where they reside in your home when not being used. There's no such thing as privacy in kids. They are your kids, they're under 18. It's a phone you purchased for them, not their phone. So there is no presumption of privacy when it comes to kids and the devices. I say phone, but it could be tablet, computer, whatever, game system, console. Make sure those things are in a high traffic location. So charge them in common spaces, get the chargers out of bedrooms, living room, family room, hallways, charge them anywhere but the bedroom. I say bedroom, this is something, nothing good comes at night when kids have their devices, the door's closed, it's late at night. Not that they can't use it in the bedroom, but maybe keep the door open. And certainly after a certain time when you want them to fall asleep, they shouldn't be in that location. Some kids may say that's their way to stream music and they have Bluetooth connected to a system in their room. Bluetooth has a distance of about 30 feet. So for my kids, their tablet, their iPad is in the kitchen, actually, so they can hit play and then go back to their bedroom. So they can listen to it. Doesn't mean the device has to be in there. Next slide. Set clear boundaries. Be clear, I mentioned this earlier, that any kind of device that you provide is to engage with other kids, or if it's a phone, to stay connected. It's for safety reasons. Be clear of your expectations of how you want your kids to use those devices and why they're being provided. It's very appropriate. There's an increase in screen time right now due to the pandemic. That's okay because they're connecting with kids and maintaining relationships. But just state that and have clear when the times are when the devices get put away, charged, but communicate these things with boundaries. You can establish limits for which apps or websites that they can visit and for how long. As far as games on their consoles, maybe a rating, what you're comfortable with them seeing, or Netflix, or where the rating is set at, and explain why. Don't be ambiguous. Be very clear in why you're doing what you're doing, so they understand. They're capable of understanding a lot more than we think. And then also filtering. If you're filtering, make sure they understand again why that is. Next slide. So help select the applications or apps. Find apps that are creative in nature, where they can make things, design things, and push technology in a way that if they weren't using technology, it couldn't be done. Anything that helps with curiosity and creativity is always a great thing for kids. And then see how they're using the app and how it makes them feel. So certain apps may help with that creative side. It may help their in connecting with other friends, maintain happiness, a social life, if you will. It makes them happy. If you find that there's an app that is continually causing them to be sad, unhappy, they're angry, they're upset, and you see that on a recurring basis, then that's an app that you may want to question why they're using and move on to something else. So it really can be boiled down simply to happy and unhappy. So think about where they get frustrated or which ones they really enjoy using most of the time. Next slide. Discuss their online app activity. So what are your favorite things to do online? What's your favorite apps? What have you seen lately on TikTok? What pictures have you noticed on Instagram that made you laugh? Talk about these things. how do you well, we'll talk about privacy in a little bit, but you could talk out scenarios. What if somebody were to off app or off game message you and say, let's meet or let's connect somewhere? What would you do? So talk, their activity, discuss, keep an open line of communication. Goes back to that privacy piece. Plus, you want your kids to understand that they can come to you for advice or for anything. And you want to be a part of that experience, a part of that world that they're in. Understanding social validation. So when kids post videos, they want follows, they want likes, they want shares, they want these things that are measurable to and impacts their validation in the world or in their group of friends. Or the more times a video gets watched, the more important I am, or the more popular I am. Watch for social validation and posting these things to get attention. So understand it, how they're doing with it, and try to help them understand that validation as far as who they are as a person doesn't come from those things. So it can't just come from those things. Yeah, it's nice to get a follower for a video to go viral every now and again if they can, but it doesn't make up who they are. So make sure they understand that. Next slide, please. Make sure to understand, explain privacy. Not everybody needs to know your information, your family's information, their information. Are too young many times to understand the long-term impacts of this, which is their digital footprint and how this will affect them going forward, the jobs that they get, the friendships they have. Once it goes online, you can never take it back. And that's really hard for them to understand when they're young. So you want to make sure your information is private. We want it to be private. Only your friends should see it. And talk to them about the long-term impacts of these things. We're now seeing a generation that has been raised with some of these things, and people have gone back, saved videos, and it's impacting political careers and work, and what I call affectionately the young and dumb days that we all need and in order to find our place in the world, but theirs are permanently being captured. So it's not as simple as it was for all of us. They need to understand that their young and dumb days just shouldn't be anything on technology. So it's appropriate for kids to make mistakes. Try not to have them do it on platforms where there's a wider audience. Next slide. If by chance there's an issue, one thing you want to do is save the evidence and report problems. So don't just take down the accounts. Don't just necessarily block right away. When you do those things and you call the Gurnee Police Department or Lake County Sheriff's Department, they're going to want to see, like if it reaches a level of criminal activity, they're going to want to see the evidence. And many times when you report it to the social company, they will immediately take it down. There's just too many reports for them to individually review. So they err on the side of caution and just remove things. Now, that police department, that police officer or deputy has to now get a subpoena, go to the company. It just takes a lot longer to get the evidence they need. So first reaction is to delete or get rid of, hold off, because that evidence may be needed. Next slide, please. Strike a life balance. This is hugely important as all of us are in this tech-enriched world. What I've heard and what the term I like to use is balance screen time with green time. We're living in a world, this stuff is not going away. It's a part of our lives, our work, our play, but it shouldn't be all in which we do. So you got to strike a balance. We want our kids to strike a balance. And that could be something like prioritizing face-to-face interactions over technology, built-in non-screen family time, meals, game night, just have those things built in. Short car rides, it's not allowed. Long car rides, it is. Those boundaries that we talked about earlier. Maybe screen-free zones in your house or encouraging wellness activities. And you can use technology to encourage wellness activities. Apps like Calm or Headspace or others can be used to help strike a balance. So you want to make sure that you model that desired behavior by using apps that also can improve your life. Last slide. Finally, find out more. There's no one person that knows this all. So reach out when you hear about an app, look it up. There's a great website called Connect Safely with a lot of resources. Another great one is Common Sense Media. We've all heard of that one before. There's an awesome movie on Amazon if you have Prime Video called Childhood 2.0. And there's one on Netflix if you're a Netflix person called Social Dilemma. And watch these documentaries, learn about all the different issues that are out there. And if your child's old enough, discuss those with your child. If they're in their teenage years, they watch with you, and then it leads to those conversations. And that's what I have for my top 10, and I'll answer questions later on.
Thank you, Tony. Kristen?
Hi, thank you. I'm Kristen Jones. I work at Zacharias Sexual Abuse Center. I work on the outreach team, so we do advocacy, prevention, and we also do a lot of community outreach and awareness raising. So I wanted to just bring up a few slides of tips. We don't have to go through every word, right? It's a lot of text. But I do want to share just a few kind of highlights. So when talking with young children, we do encourage parents to use the actual body part names. We encourage you to think about secrets and having conversations with your children about what is a good secret, what is a bad secret, what is a safe secret, what's an unsafe secret. Make sure they know they won't get in trouble when they come to you. We also like to make sure that you talk about consent, right? So that's number 3 on this list. Make sure that children know it's okay to say no to an adult. It's okay to say no to a friend online who's asking for something you don't want to do. And then we also like to highlight that children need to know who the safe people are in their life. So if you can talk to your children about who are these safe people that they can talk to, because children don't always want to talk to their parents, right? Sometimes sexual activity is embarrassing and they don't want to talk to their parents. So let them know that it's okay if you know a teacher that you trust, or someone in your faith community that the child trusts. Make a list of those people so that they know who to go to if anything ever comes up with themselves or with a friend. Okay, next. And then talking to teenagers, it gets a little more complex, right? So we need to start talking about social media. And I'm lumping in middle school here, right? When social media really starts becoming a bigger part of their life. So have those conversations with your teens about social media. Maybe even use your own experiences to tell about a safety story. We've all had, creepy messages on social media, on Facebook or Instagram, right? So tell your own stories about what you did. How did you deal with it? Did you report it to anybody? Did you block the person? And those are helpful for children to hear. Talking about being a bystander, someone who's watching something else happen. So if they see something happening online, you can talk to your teenagers about how to be a good friend, right? A good bystander who reports things, who watches out for their friends, and not just letting things happen. And then number 4, talk about sexual assault directly. So using the facts and the statistics. So at Zacharias Center, we like to teach about laws, and we like to make sure that teenagers are aware that you must be 17 in Illinois to legally give consent. 17, and anything under that age is considered sexual abuse. So talking about those kinds of laws directly with students, it does make a difference. Okay, next. And I listed here a few conversation starters, so ways to engage with your own teens about social media and online safety. Tell me something interesting that you saw online today, right? That can be something you talk about over dinner. What are the apps that you like to use, right? It's good for us to learn about these other apps because it's not just Facebook and Instagram, right? There are so many social media apps out there. Talk about which friends are on these apps with your children. Talk about something that you saw on social media that you liked, right? To engage your children in this conversation. The fifth one there, maybe share a story again about your own experience with online safety and how you handled it. Okay, next. And then this last one, I just wanted to share a few tips about what you can do as a parent if one of your children does disclose to you that something in the realm of abuse did happen to them. So as a parent, you can remain calm, listen, believe your child, right? Start with believing. We can learn about the facts and build up what actually happened, but start with believing. Use the child's language. Don't start inserting legal language if they're saying words like bad touch, right? Number 6, don't project or assume, right? Just listen with an open mind. Assess safety needs. Number 7, make sure that your child is safe. Make sure that their friends online are safe. And have that conversation with your child too. Like, are you thinking about your friend's safety as well? Number 8, find out what the child wants from you. Number 9, validate their feelings. So telling your child that everything they're feeling is perfectly normal, perfectly fine. If they're afraid, that's fine. If they don't feel anything, that's fine. We all have different reactions. Number 10, reassure the child, right? You're the adult, you're there for them, and you're going to help them. Number 11, let the child know they have the right to be safe, right? No one should have to go through bullying or cyberbullying or sexting if they don't want it. They have the right to say no. They have the right to be safe online. And then finally, number 12, let the child know what you will do. So think of an actual plan moving forward and discuss as a family how you're going to move forward. All right. And I think that's it for my portion. So I'll hand it back to Becky.
Thank you, Kristen. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen there. And we do have a few questions. So let me just start here. Do any of you have suggestions on how to introduce cyberbullying as a concept to elementary age students?
Well, cyberbullying is actually taught to kids at school typically, but of course now we're not in school anymore. What you have to look for with that is, again, like what Tony said, is you've got to be aware of what these kids are seeing on the screens. Are they acting differently? Do they not want to do their homework? Do they want to, just sleep all day? You know your child, and if they're doing things that they didn't normally do before, you're going to need to dig a little bit further. Cyberbullying is just insane. Like I said, I was absolutely shocked with some things that I saw and listened to. And these kids, when they start feeling that way and not wanting to go to school, and they start thinking maybe, even about suicide because they're so unhappy and scared to go to school. So if they're not in school, I would ask you just to research a little bit and sit down and talk to your child, about what's going on.
Thank you, Tammy. Does anyone else have anything else they'd like to add?
I would just add that most children, they know what bullying is, right? It's everywhere. Even if they don't have a phone or an online account on social media, they know what bullying is in school, right? It's there. So bringing up the topic is really just engaging your child and asking, what are you already experiencing? What are you seeing? And maybe diving into how that kind of overlaps into their online activity.
The only other thing I would add is every public school is required to teach it, like Tammy said. There's a state law that requires it, 3rd grade on up. The scope and sequence is left up to the local district. And then if they receive federal funds through what's called the E-rate program, They're required to filter as well as teach online safety in their curriculum, and many public school districts collect E-rate funds, federal funds. That's how the federal government mandates things in education, which is typically a state function. So accept our money, you need to do these things. So if your kids attend public school, they are getting it somewhere. If you don't know where that is, reach out to the tech teacher, computer lab teacher, classroom teacher, find out what grade, what age that's being taught, and then you can decide if you need to address it earlier than what they would get it in school, or to what extent they talk about it in school.
Thank you. While we're on the topic of school, the same participant actually had a question about how to address children's disclosure in a classroom setting. Kristen, I know that Z Center provides some in-classroom instruction or material, is that correct?
Yeah. So it's a lot of the same tips that we shared for parents, and we generally recommend that 2 adults are in these Aaron's Law sessions that we bring into schools. So we do like to have 1 adult who can handle those disclosures and can talk with the child and validate them, and also help them address the issue in an appropriate way. So that would be my tip. If you are a teacher, this person who asked, maybe work with your school social worker and make sure that there's an adult who can work with this individual one-on-one while you continue teaching, right?
Kristen, is that not also a law that has to be talked about every year in school?
Yeah, that's Aaron's Law that we teach about all of these sexual abuse issues every year. Yeah.
Thank you. Would someone like to address online safety involving video games?
I'm thinking probably Tony. What I know about that is that when you're playing a game online and not knowing who you're playing with, and they can actually start that predator behavior in games like Minecraft or Fortnite. And if you're not watching what your kid is doing, you really don't know what's happening. But Tony's more the expert on that.
Well,
right, Tony?
I'm not a gamer, but I have teenagers. So yeah, pretty much, we talk about cell phone safety, we talk about laptops, tablets, various devices, desktop computers, but very rarely do parents our age think about the gaming console as an internet device, which it is. So it's online, and many of the games that the kids are playing, there is communication with people they've never met. And that's just how you play. Many of these role-based games, team games, they count on one another. You're talking to people. And there was a time in which I would used to say, if you haven't met them in person, you shouldn't be playing with them online. Until you fast forward, well, pretty much everything they do is with people they don't know. So I've switched the conversation to address concerning behaviors when people talk to you online. So if it's about gameplay, fine. If it's about teamwork and just fine. But when someone starts to talk about things that are not game related, or they want to take the conversation out of the environment of the game, that's a no. So big red flag. So it just needs to be talked about to the kids at least this is my advice. When it's in the game and about the game, fine. But anything off topic, move on, address, block, switch topic. Same thing they would do if someone approached them in real life and started saying those things. Just do it digitally.
I would also add, as a parent, right, to just jump in and observe, right, or play the game with your children and see what it's like, because a lot of us aren't even aware of what these games are like or what conversations are going on during the play. So just to engage and be part of it for a few minutes is really eye-opening for us, and it gives us a clue as to what they're experiencing.
Thank you. And Kristen, thank you for adding that. I'll say, as a parent myself, it was very, as far as gaming went, right? Like, who are you talking to? Don't talk, as Tony was saying, right, where we thought talking to anyone during gaming might have been a bad idea. And then I tried to play it myself, which A, was embarrassing, right? Gave my kids a good laugh, but B, it helped me understand too what those conversations were about and how they were working. So it was really helpful. Thank you for mentioning that.
Yeah, can I make a statement
yeah.
on that?
Yes.
Becky, if it's okay, just in general speaking, like parents our age, you know, there used to be a belief, internet's bad, everything online is bad, and that just doesn't work. The technology is not going away, internet's going away. It is what it is, and these kids are going into a childhood that was very different than ours, childhood 2.0, or the new childhood, if you will. And we just need, the conversation needs to turn from this is bad, no, never use it, to how do you use it appropriately and effectively. And that's kind of what's being done here. If the reality of trying to block, never use the PS4 or now PS5, you know, that's just not realistic, because when they're not with you, they're going to go to a friend's house and use it. So, I mean, we can ban all we want. And if that's your personal belief, I don't want to tell you otherwise, but they're going to be away from you. They're going to be at a friend's house, grandma's house, aunt and uncle, whatever. And they're going to stumble across things. You're going to stumble across pornography. It'll happen. And it's better to teach them about how to react when these things happen than it is to think that it will never happen.
Thank you. So speaking of pornography, since you brought it up, we did have one question. How do you explain what pornography is to your kids, and at what age is this conversation appropriate?
I think that conversation is appropriate as long as they can comprehend what you're saying, and understand that child pornography, if you have it on your phone, whether it's a picture of yourself and you're 16 years old, you are in possession of child pornography. When you send that picture to somebody else of yourself, that person has child pornography. Anyone that has that on their phone or has seen it and sent it, it's disseminating child pornography. And these are very serious crimes. And I tell you, it was kind of difficult when it first came out, because, you know, we had a situation where a girl sent a nude picture to her boyfriend, and it ended up, we looked at like 100 phones and we just had to stop. And this is where you have to understand, it doesn't go away. It's always out there. Like Tony was saying, if your future job or your college, they have access to that stuff. And I could tell you a lot of stories about that, which obviously we don't have time for that, but they have to know just how simple that it is. Just anything, or asking somebody to send pictures, that it's all a crime. So you think you're in love with this person, you know, you're 15 years old, you know, I love him, he's asking me for pictures, and they send them. It's never a good idea.
Yeah, and I would add, you know, whenever a student is old enough to use a phone or an iPad or have any sort of those social interactions through a device, I think that's the perfect time to start talking about this and talking about, you know, these legal issues and also just the body privacy issues, right? Like if you don't want someone talking about your body or seeing your body, you have that right to say no, right? And if they're not listening, or if they're abusing your friendship somehow, make sure you tell someone right away.
Thank you. And actually, one of our panel or participants just added in the chat, also similar to what you just said, Kristen had said before, that you know, teaching about pornography little by little as they're growing up starts with some of the things you talked about, knowing the names of body parts and who can and can't be near them or touch them, or what is acceptable. Thank you. Let's see. There's a question about an order of protection. Is there a way to have an order of protection put in place to include social media and cell phone numbers? even with blocking a person, they still manage to connect from friends' accounts, creating problems.
Yeah, I mean, orders of protection are fairly easy to get if you have the evidence or the proof behind it. And when somebody violates that, that's a crime. You have to make sure that they know that you don't want it, and you get that order of protection. They violate that, and absolutely can include the internet or any form of contact from that phone or computer. You name the people that's involved in that. Maybe it's you know, a boyfriend, girlfriend, and you have to block it. And again, we had that at Oak Plain School where there are a lot of orders of protection even, and it's difficult within a school because they pass each other in the hallway or they're in a class together, and the school works very well with changing the schedule and changing the routes that they go to make sure that there is no interaction unless they choose to have it, which is then again a violation. That's it.
Thank you. So at the moment, I think we've answered the questions that are in the Q&A. I just would like to take a moment to give any other participants a chance to add anything that they might like to ask. And Tony, go ahead. Was there something
Yeah,
else?
well, there was one I think I saw in the chat that got dumped in there about hidden pictures. It came in early on. I can quickly knock that one out. I think the person was asking, how do you find hidden pictures on devices? Some of the signs are when your kids are turning off their screen the second you enter in a room, refusing to hand over passwords when you're asking for their phone. There are apps that can hide pictures, so having multiples of the same type of app is a giveaway. And yes, there are specific apps out there that their sole purpose is to hide pictures. App Lock, Vault, Spy Calc, Photo Vault. You can have a hidden pictures just naturally in your iPhone. It says hidden. It just means when you open up the photos, it just doesn't display right away. But that might be enough to trick a parent who may not be tech savvy and know that you can have hidden folders inside of an iPhone. So just to name a few, yeah, there's all kinds of ways. Kids will be kids. We tried to figure out ways to beat our parents at the game when we were younger, and they're figuring out their way right now to try to get around us. So do some Googling online, just ways that kids can hide pictures, and you can find all this information out there.
Thank you. I think there was that question in the chat, and also the second part of it was, are there some apps that seem to put teens at the greatest risk of being bullied or exploited?
I mean, they all have that capability if there's a way to upvote or comment or watch while commenting. I mean, they all have that potential to have a bullying. It just gives a venue for that bullying to occur. You can pick on individual apps all you want, but the second I give you a list of 20, there's one that comes out tomorrow that is equally as bad. So if we're going to sit here and talk about TikTok, then we should be talking about how Instagram came out with a feature like TikTok in order to compete against TikTok. Or, they're all anything where someone can, my criteria has always been anything that allows commenting, and particularly in an anonymous way, or allows users to be anonymous so you can't trace back who they are, and also has some kind of location component where you have to have location services on. I never think that's I never think that's a good thing, unless you're using a map. No one needs to know where you are in the middle of using an app. So look for those kind of things, anonymizing location services and ways that you can validate group anonymously comments. So they all have the potential. I mean, even Facebook. has the potential. They all do. It's how you use the app, not necessarily the app itself.
Thank you. Somewhat along those lines, we did just get one additional question about how to set up safety controls to phones. It was a participant who had some concerns about, looks like messages through Roblox that her child was playing, and she's just asking for any advice or help on how to make the phone safer for her daughter to use as well.
There's stuff built into the OS. Apple has screen time. I forget what Android has, but what it's called, but it's there. It's built in. The companies put it in there. You don't have to pay for anything necessarily. It has some built-in controls, but if you so chose to pay for something, there's plenty of products out there to look at. Bark is the number one that I always recommend. A lot of people enjoy Disney Circle. And there's a couple others that are out there if you really want to do that. My cautionary tale is those are good for accidental stumbling of pornography, or they're good for catching, they do catch things, phrases, images, they alert you. But also know that it's relationships with your kids are better. They beat technological solutions all the time, because where there's a tech solution, there's a way around a tech solution. So, and if it's, you can put all the locks you want on that phone, but if they hang out after school with a peer who has a cell phone, they'll just jump on that cell phone. So it's the system can be beat. These are kids. So it's much better to talk about what you expect, how to deal with things when problems come up, and have an open line of communication with your kids.
Thank you. So I think that we've covered all of the questions. I just want to give you an opportunity if you have any last thoughts or comments that you would like to share before we wrap up.
I wanted to share briefly that any of the attendees, if you ever feel, kind of stressed about something sexual happening with your child, we're here to support you at Zacharias Center. We have a 24/7 hotline. That number is 847-872-7799. And I did put it in the chat. And we like to help survivors of any sexual abuse, but also their significant others, including parents. So if you're feeling anxious about this issue and you just want to talk to somebody, we have advocates on call 24/7. So please make use of that. We'd be happy to help you talk through your options and maybe even refer you to other community partners.
Thank you, Kristen. All right, I'm just going to do one last quick check of the Q&A, make sure we got everything. Oh, there actually is one more question now. Oh, I'm not sure that I understand it, so I'm not sure if it's tech language I just don't know, so I'm going to read it as it is and see if it makes sense to one of you. It says, if your child is in cinch, IHOPs, what seems like a children's, I think that maybe got cut off before it was complete. If the participant would like to retype the question, we can take a moment to see if we can get it answered. Unless someone knows what IHOP is, except for the International House of Pancakes. This is not, I'm assuming it's not another tech term. We'll see. I don't see it coming through there. One last question is advice on how to have my child surrender their phone. Can you restate how you said it belongs to us and not to them, please?
Yes, restated. I am giving you permission, I'm anointing you to take your kid's cell phone, because it's not really their cell phone. It's the cell phone that you provide for their safety and to maintain relationships. Maybe they need it when they get out from school. until they're 18, those kids and everything that they do, you are 100% responsible for and have a responsibility to know what they're doing on those devices. You provide it to them. It's not something they went to a job, worked, purchased, and maintain. So I am giving you permission to get into their business. The thing that I'm trying to combat is this presumption of privacy, and it's my kid's phone and they don't want to give it to me, or they don't want to. Not a choice. You provide it, you can turn it off, you can do whatever you need to do to keep your child safe. So I just want to be clear. It's not a preference, it's a responsibility you have as a parent until they're the age of 18, like anything else that they do. You don't let them go and drive a car at 16 without proper conversations, training, insurance, all those things. I'm not saying it's the same thing, but it is, you control that process. So please don't let your kids guilt you, make you feel guilty, try to convince you otherwise, like you would any other thing in your house. If you need to take it away for their, you know better than they do what's good for them or not, take it away, set the boundaries. One caveat, that is how they maintain connections with kids. So maybe don't take it away for a month or something like that. That is how they stay connected, particularly during COVID-19. So, hey, for this night, I'm going to put it away. I will tell you that one night that you take it away is just as effective as taking it away for a month. It will hurt them, but they need to understand what your boundaries are. They agree to what the boundaries are early on. You enforce if they break those boundaries. It's just good parenting.
I would even go a step further to say, even if they did purchase it themselves and pay for the service, that you are still the parent. And if it's causing a problem, it needs to be taken. And the other thing is start young. Set those guidelines as soon as they have their first device, because as they get older and bigger than you, it could be a problem, as I've seen throughout the years. If you don't start that discipline with anything when they're younger, it's just going to be tenfold as they continue to grow.
And I would also add here that when you take a child's phone away, it doesn't have to necessarily be seen as a time of punishment, right? We can look at it as an opportunity for the entire family. Like, let's all put our phones down for the night. Let's go for a hike. Let's make a fire out in the backyard. So it really depends on your parenting style, right? And what your family norms are. But it could actually be a great time to really model good behavior for your children and spend quality time with them, right? Because they can't be on their phone. So I encourage all of you to think about creative ways to use that time with your children.
Great, thank you. That one question that I was having trouble reading has come through again. And it is, if your child is in contact with what seems to be another child, how can you verify that? Is it possible?
So depends on the age of the child. I'll share a personal story. I have a younger daughter, and during this COVID time, I needed her, as her elementary school has remained closed, to stay connected with other kids outside of the school day. And I did some searching online and landed on Facebook, Kids Messenger by Facebook. It's free. It's a very controlled process. We know who she's connected with. It's approved. Make sure the camera is on, so you actually see the child. Many times who she's video chatting with, their parents are nearby, and many times she's nearby us, and that's how you know. But there's an approval process. So anyway, have a controlled environment, I guess, where you can monitor that communication, or just use the simple suggestion I said, is video always has to be on, whatever the tool is.
Great, thank you. So it looks like we have covered all of the questions we've received. So I just want to take a moment to say thank you very much to Tammy Martin, Tony DeMonte, and Kristen Jones for joining us tonight and sharing your expertise and your advice. It's greatly appreciated for our community. And also, as Kristen mentioned, the information for Z Center's 24/7 hotline is in the chat, as well as Warren Township Youth and Family Services phone number if you're looking for free child or family therapy and live in Warren Township. You can reach out to Youth and Family Services at 847-244-1101, extension 401. And if there's nothing else to add, we do have a couple of thank yous in the chat to panelists. So not only from HCHY, but from the participants, thank you very much for your time. And have a good night, everyone.